I was approached by the Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity. It's a national fraternity of African American members. And I was very excited because they were African American and because we need so badly to have African American role models. After I spoke, the keynote speaker was Reverend Eric Lee.
And what did Reverend Lee say?
I'm still so overwhelmed and shocked by what he said. I mean, I heard Reverend Wright say things like that on television, but this man was looking straight at me, into my eyes, and he knew I was Jewish.
And he said what?
The same kind of things that Reverend Wright said. He talked about the Jewish people being responsible for, you know, all the horrors that are occurring in the African American community. Jewish people being responsible for the negative images of African Americans as rapists and murderers. That the Jewish community is responsible for so many, for the money that is being made on the back of African American entertainers. And he talked about how a rabbi came to him and said, you know, we in the Jewish community, and he said it in such a peculiar way too. He said, a Jewish rabbi came to me, and then he laughed. And he said, of course, there are no other rabbis but Jewish rabbis. And it was such a, it was said in such distaste. And then he said something like, he intimated that because Barack Obama is now their leader and the gates are open for them to tell the truth about the Jewish people and how they're making money on the backs of African Americans, and you know, just the correlation to you know, African Americans ending up in prison and all of this, and blaming the Jewish people for it. And I just stood up, I left my award there, and I left. I went outside, and what happened was that many of the people from the room followed me, and one of the junior Paul Marks, Mike Davis, came out and he said, this is not what I feel, and many African Americans don't feel this. And I want you to know that I apologize sincerely. And Ken Maxey came out and said, I apologize too. This is not something that I feel. And this is horrible. It's making me feel ashamed. But yet, at the same time, there was a woman there. And she said, turned around to me and she said, well, you deserve it because you guys have treated us so badly. And so I was realizing what was happening. And another woman was there, one of the sorority people, and she said, this is not just happening here. This is happening everywhere. She was very upset, and she was African American. And she said, this is happening at Reverend Meek's church in Chicago. This is happening all over the country. And I realized that we as a Jewish community, this was not about politics for me. This was not about anything else, but this is about my people. I grew up in Israel. I grew up believing in a Statue of Liberty. I grew up looking forward to a day that I could come because, you know, the Statue of Liberty is all about give me your poor and your huddled as long as they believe in freedom. And this shocked me to my core. And I find this appalling on the day that we're supposed to celebrate the spirit of Martin Luther King. Americans don't understand one thing. They don't understand that when you're not born here, and you hear the story and the courage of Martin Luther King, and you've seen the videos, and you've heard his words, they didn't only inspire the African American communities. They inspired all people who have been persecuted. They inspired the Jewish people. They inspired Israel. They inspired so many. And there is no one iota of a reason ever to discredit what he stood for all people. I don't believe for one second that Martin Luther King would have stood there and said the words that Reverend Lee said. I mean, I just, I find that this is opening the gate to something that isn't healthy for this country.
Yeah.
And I think it's time. It's time for Reverend Lee to apologize to the entire Jewish community. It's time for all those reverends to stop or to bring it out into the open. If they really believe that, then they're not leaders, because I know a lot of African Americans that don't believe that. And I know a lot of Jews that have done so much for this country that don't deserve this. This is racism at its highest. And I believe that Barack Obama can change that. I believe he has to take responsibility for sitting in that church for 20 years and listening to this and not standing up for the Jewish people. And I think he needs to do that now. What did anybody do? You know what? He's talking about people making money on the back of African Americans in the entertainment industry. Why isn't he talking about Russell Simmons? Why isn't he talking about Berry Gordy? Why isn't he talking about Quincy Jones? There, I can give you so many examples. This is not owned by Jews. How dare they find an enemy to unite some sort of a theology? It's not okay. And I find that personally assaulting, because this is it's about my homeland, Israel. It's about my people, my Jewish people. And first and foremost, it's about the divide that is occurring in America.